everyone, my name is Anya Anti. I'm a fine art conceptual photographer and storytelling photo artist. In this mini 4-video series, I'm going to show you how to plan, conduct, and finalize a fine art conceptual photo shoot from start to finish and create a new artwork. In the previous video, I started talking about post-production, how to select images, color theory, how I raw process my images and edit them in Lightroom. And today I'll continue talking about editing. I will show you my Photoshop workflow, I'll edit the photo from our shoot, and talk about compositing, retouching, AI tools, and much more. So in the previous tutorial, I showed you how I processed these raw files in the Lightroom and exported them as JPEGs. Here's my folder, and here are my JPEGs, already processed and color corrected in Lightroom. And I'm going to take this image and now proceed into Photoshop to edit it and transform into final artwork. To open this image in Photoshop, I simply click, drag, and drop it into my already opened Photoshop. And the first step is to crop it. As you've probably noticed, all my work is square format. There's no specific reason behind it, it's just a personal preference. And also, as I talked about it in the previous tutorial, the space around the bathtub setup was pretty tight, so I couldn't really step back to get a wider view. So my only option was to take multiple images and stitch them together into one, kind of like a panorama. So that's what I did. I shot the center of the setup first, and then took additional images of the top and the bottom. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the crop tool, and here at the top at the toolbar, I make sure that I choose the 1:1 square format ratio. And when cropping, I always have the delete crop pixels box unchecked for the non-destructive editing. So now my goal is not just crop it to 1:1 ratio, but also expand the frame. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on the crop tool handles. Judging by this wall line right here, you can see that my image and the horizon line were slightly tilted. That's why I'm going to rotate the image as well. And then click OK. But now I have all these empty pixels at the top and the bottom of the frame that I need to fill in with pieces from other photos. And for that, I have some additional shots. For the bottom part of the image, I'm going to use this one. And again, I'm simply clicking, dragging, and dropping it onto my file. Photoshop has placed my image and automatically created a new layer. With the Move tool, I'm going to move it down. Apply a mask by clicking on this square icon down in the layer panel. Grab a brush tool with black color, 100% opacity. Increase its size with square brackets. Make sure that its hardness is 0. And simply paint over the top portion of this newly created layer with the bottom part of my setup until I almost reach the edge. Like that. But to be able to see what's going on underneath this layer, I'm going to reduce the opacity of this layer. And to do that, I can either go to the Layers panel and reduce the opacity right here, or I can use keyboard shortcuts. When I'm in any of the selection tools, such as Marquee tool, Move tool, or Lasso, for example, and I hit a number on my keypad, let's say 5, it changes the opacity of the layer. If I hit 7, it changes the opacity to 70%, 5, 50%, and 0 is 100%. So I'm changing the opacity to 50%, and now I can see both layers. And I can clearly see now where I need to move this layer with the bottom of my setup. And also can see that I probably need to transform it, like right here. And to do that, I'm going to hit Ctrl or Command T for free transformation. And by clicking and dragging these transformation handles, I'm going to transform my top layer until it matches with the layer underneath. For more flexible transformation, I'm going to use other options of the Free Transform tool. So I right-click on the mouse for the pop-up menu, and here you can see all these different options, and I'm going to choose Distort. And now I can transform my layer a bit more freely. For even more flexibility, I'm going to choose Warp and continue transforming. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just need to make sure that these edges where my mask ends match with my underneath layer. I think it looks good, so I'm clicking OK. And I'm bringing back the opacity of this top layer back to 100% by hitting 0. And let's double check that everything matches by clicking this layer on and off. And I think it looks pretty good. And I'll click on the mask. Here's the mask. I feel like this newly created layer, the bottom part of my bath balloon setup, is slightly lighter than the layer underneath it, so it needs to be darkened. And I can either click on the layer because right now I was on the mask, not the layer, judging by this highlighted line around the mask. And I can go to Image Adjustments and apply my adjustments straight to the layer. But I want my editing to be as non-destructive as possible, meaning that I want to be able to save my file, close it, open it a week or maybe even a month later, and still be able to make changes to all the steps that I do, including the adjustments. And for that, we have adjustment layers. You can find the adjustment layers here at the bottom of the layer panel. And here are all the adjustments. And I'm going to choose curves. But now if I do any changes to the curves, they will affect both of my layers. But I want this curve adjustment to only affect the top layer, which is this one. And for that, I'm going to use a clipping mask. To clip my curves adjustment layer to my pixel layer, I go to the Properties menu and click on this square with an arrow icon. And now my curves adjustments are clipped to my layer and only affect this layer. Now I can clearly see that I've darkened my curves a bit too much, so I'm going back to the Properties, click on this point on the curve and pull it up. Now it looks perfect. Now I'm going to proceed and fill in the top edge of the frame with another photo, and I'm going to use the same approach. I'm going to choose this photo, drag and drop it into the Photoshop. I'm going to open it as a new file, and I'm going to take rectangular marquee tool and only select this top portion of the image. Then grab Move tool, click and drag and drop it onto my image like this. Then again, with the Move tool, I'm going to reposition it higher up. I can see that it clearly needs some transformation. So I'm going to hit Ctrl T and transform it. Rotate it, reposition, and maybe apply some of these options, such as perspective. Then click again and choose Distort, until my balloons and the piece of the wall match together. I think it looks great, so now I'm going to again apply the mask, grab a mask, choose black color, and paint over the edge of this layer until it blends with the layers underneath it. Here I went a little bit too far, and that's okay. That's why we use the non-destructive editing method. So I simply switch to white color by hitting X on my keyboard and brush back over the mask. Switch back to the black again. Paint a little bit more. Where I went too far, I go back to the white brush and make sure that everything looks good. I don't worry about the shower head or the cable because I'm going to remove them later. But I need to make sure that this wall piece looks good. I don't need this file anymore, so I'm going to close it. I feel like I want to change my crop a little bit, and that's why I always uncheck the delete crop pixels to be able to go back and change my crop a little bit, like this. Everything looks good, and I want to proceed with my editing. And I feel like I want to enlarge my setup a little bit compared to the subject. And to do that, I'm going to stretch the edges of the frame. And the first step would be to create a copy merge. Let me collapse this menu. And to do that, I'm going to hit Alt, Control, Shift, and E. And it created a copy merged layer on top of everything. Now it will probably be a good time to save my file just in case. To do that, I'm hitting Control, Shift, S. Rename my file. and make sure that I save it as a PSD. Now I can proceed. To stretch the edges of the frame, I'm going to take Marquee tool, the rectangular Marquee tool. And I'm going to start with the bottom part of the image. I'm going to select it like this and hit Ctrl T. This free transformation now only affects the selected area. And I'm going to simply stretch down and click OK. Ctrl D to deselect. And I'm going to repeat the same steps for all 4 edges of my frame. The only thing that I need to make sure is to not affect the subject, so I won't be selecting the subject. And here is before and after. Now it's time for some retouching. Let's zoom in onto my model. She doesn't need a lot of work, but there are a few things that I would like to fix. For example, I would like to fix her hair a little bit. Give the hairdo a better shape and make it slightly fuller. To proceed with my retouching, I'm going to create a copy of my layer. To do that, I'm hitting Ctrl J. And because I want to focus on my model and not the whole image, kind of like a close-up, I'm going to roughly select her with my rectangular Marquee tool, like this, and then go to Filter, Liquify. Here in the Liquify filter, I'm using the Forward Warp tool to move my pixels and give her hair a bit better shape. Right now, I'm not worried about the background or the balloons being affected and stretched. I'm only focused on the hair, and the rest I can fix later. I think her hair looks great now, and my only other issue is her right hand. From this angle, it looks a bit crooked, so I'm going to fix the shape of the hand just a little bit. And that's pretty much it, and I click OK. Ctrl D to deselect. And as you can see, my background around the hair stretched a little bit, and that's okay. I'm going to click on a mask and apply mask, grab a brush tool with black color, 0% hardness, and just brush around her hair, masking the stretched background. I don't like this part of her hair, it's a bit messy, so to fix that, I'm going to grab lasso tool, zoom in, select it like this, roughly, and then go to my generative fill toolbar. Here it is. If you don't see the generative fill contextual taskbar, you can go to Window and turn it on right here. After selecting this area, I'm going to simply click on generative fill, leave the prompt bar empty and click generate. It's going to take a few seconds. And Photoshop created a new, kind of like tidied up version of this area. And we have 3 options. I think I like this one. Now it's time to do some retouching. For example, I want to remove the shower head and the tubes, balloon tape, some scratches on the walls, and I'm also not a big fan of the loose ends of the balloons where they were tied up. To do that, I'm going to create a new empty layer by hitting this icon down at the layer panel with the plus sign for the new empty layer. And I'm going to work with the remove tool. Up here at the tool options bar, I make sure that I have sample all layers checked. I usually work in auto mode, and sometimes I check the remove after each stroke or uncheck it, depending on the situation. And I'm going to start removing the shower head. I simply brush over it and also all the tubes. And click OK. And Photoshop analyzes the area powered by the Firefly AI and automatically removes the area for me, generating the new pixels on top of it. And I'm going to proceed and remove the rest of the shower head. If I feel like I need a smarter approach of removing things and generating new pixels, I switch to Generative AI On. When using the remove tool and removing things, make sure that it also selects the shadows that these things create. And I'm also removing the piece of the nude top. Okay, I'm done with retouching and I think it looks good now. Now I want to proceed by making my balloon setup a little bit fuller, meaning I want to add some extra balloons to the setup and also maybe a few floating around. Let's say I want to add a little balloon floating here. To do that, I'm going to grab the elliptical marquee tool, go back to my merged layer, where I was doing some liquefying, and select one of these balloons. I like this one, so I'm going to roughly select it like this, and I'm going to hit Ctrl J to create a copy of this selection. Right there. Now I'm going to grab my move tool, move this layer all the way up, and move this balloon. I'm going to hit Ctrl T for free transformation and make it smaller. But now I have a little bit of an issue here. I have this piece of another balloon and I'm going to fix it. Let me zoom in by using generative fill. I'm going to grab lasso tool and roughly select this area. Go to my generative fill contextual taskbar, click generative fill, fill the prompt bar empty and click generate. And Photoshop automatically fixed it for me. And again, I have 3 different options. I think I like this one. I want to add another floating balloon right here. So again, I'm going to repeat the same steps. Grab elliptical marquee tool, go back to my pixel, merged layer, and I want to select this one. I really like this one. So I'm selecting it, hitting Ctrl J to make a copy, moving this balloon all the way up, grab my move tool, and move it slightly sideways. Ctrl T, transform it a bit, make it maybe slightly more round, and there you go. I'm going to make a copy of this layer by hitting Ctrl J and make this one maybe even smaller. Move it around to create this kind of illusion of floating balloons. Like this. I feel like I want to add more balloons right here on this side. For that, I'm going to utilize what I already have in frame, the same way that I did with these floating balloons. So I'm going back to my pixelated layer, grab lasso tool, and for that, I'm going to select these balloons down here. Like this. Again, Ctrl J to make a copy, move it all the way up. And with the lasso tool, I'm moving it up here. I'm going to decrease the opacity of the layer the same way that I did previously to see where I want to place these balloons and zero back to 100%. Now, of course, I need to mask this layer. So I'm going to create a mask and then I'm going to grab a quick selection tool and select the area around the balloons. To smooth out the edges, I'm going to select and mask up here at the tools option bar. And here I'm going to play with smooth and feather until the edges of the balloons become nice and smooth. And click OK. And now with the black soft brush, brush away and mask the background behind the balloons. Ctrl D to deselect. But the thing is, I want these balloons to kind of like be behind these balloons, not in front of them. So I'm going to turn this layer off for now. Again, grab a quick selection tool and select the background. And maybe this balloon right here. Now I'm going to turn my layer back on, invert the selection by hitting Ctrl Shift I, grab a brush and brush over the balloons that I want to be in front. And mask the balloons that are on a separate layer right now. Kind of like this. It's always a good idea to double check your mask. And to do that, I'm holding Alt key and I'm clicking on the mask to get the mask view. And I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And I also want to go a little bit over with my black brush to make sure that there are no weird lines left. Just to be safe. Alt click on the mask back to the normal view. And here's the before and after. I'm going to repeat these same steps and add a bit more balloons right here at the top right corner of the frame. And for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to speed up the process. To fine-tune the mask, I simply use a brush tool with black and white color. I'm adding more balloons and I'm repeating the same steps over and again. I'm changing the size of the balloons by using free transformation to make them less identical. To resolve the issue where the part of the balloon is missing, I'm using the generative fill again. Now I'm going to select all the layers with my extra balloons by holding Shift key and hit Ctrl G to group them together. Double click on the group and rename it Extra Balloons. And here's before, all the extra balloons, and after. Let's try and use generative fill in Photoshop to generate some extra balloons as well. For example, right here, I want to add a balloon here to cover up this hole, and maybe a couple of floating ones. And to do that, I'm going to select this area right here. And here's my contextual taskbar. I'm going to hit generative fill, but this time I'm going to type in the prompt. I'm going to type in round white balloon and click generate. Not quite what I expected, and that's okay. Let me delete this one. I think the problem was with the selection. I'm going to take elliptical marquee tool and select a slightly larger area and type in the same thing. Round white balloon. Now this looks much better, something that I wanted, and I like this option right here. And I'm going to repeat the same thing, but up here. But this time I'm going to type in clear round balloon. Not quite what I wanted, definitely not this one, so I'm going to delete this variation and this one and regenerate again. Yes, this is something that I want. Looks good. And I'm going to repeat and generate another balloon right here and type in the same thing. This one looks good. I feel like these balloons are nice but a bit too bright, so I'm just going to reduce their opacity. Much better. And I'm also going to group these balloons, Shift and hitting Ctrl G, and name it generated balloons. Just to organize my layers and keep them tidy. During the photo shoot, I used a handheld smoke haze machine with bubble attachment, so I want to use some of these cute little white balloons and put them onto my image. For example, I'm going to use this image. And again, I'm going to open it in Photoshop, So I'm going to grab elliptical marquee tool and select these balloons right here. Take move tool and drop it onto my image and place them exactly on top of this balloon right here. I feel like it looks slightly darker, so I'm going to apply curves to it. This time I won't bother with using adjustment layers. I'm going to apply the curves straight to the layer. To do that, I'm hitting Ctrl M and drag the RGB master curve up to brighten. Okay, then apply a mask, and with the white black brush, 100% opacity, make sure that it's soft. I'm going to mask around these little bubbles. The mask doesn't have to be precise, it can be pretty loose. And then just move it until it matches and blends with the image. Like this. Let's grab another little bubble. Let's take this little one and same thing. Dropping it onto my image, maybe slightly brighten it. Apply the mask. And with the black soft brush, mask the edges of this layer and then move it until it matches with the background, with the balloons, and mask again to blend with the image. Maybe brighten it a bit more until it blends completely. And then maybe grab this little one. Move tool. Let's drop it somewhere here. And because it's a perfect round shape, all I need to do is simply take an elliptical marquee tool, select it like this, and apply a mask. And it's going to be masked automatically. And now with my move tool, I can pretty much put it anywhere on the background. I'm going to proceed and add all the little extra bubbles, but because it's going to take a while, because there's a lot of them, I'm going to do that kind of like off camera to save some time for the sake of this tutorial and come back to you in a second with all the little bubbles already composited into my image. And here's my image with all the little smoke bubbles already composited into my image. And here you can see in the layers panel that I have a new group that I called smoke balloons. Probably it's not balloons, it's bubbles. And here are all the layers with these little bubbles. And you can turn on and off each one individually. And here's before and after the little smoke bubbles. Okay, at this point, I'm pretty happy with my image. I'm done with retouching and compositing and adding all the extra balloons and little bubbles. So now it's time for some final adjustments. If you saw the second tutorial from this series, where I was creating this set and shooting this photograph, I mentioned that my initial idea was to use clear and white balloons to create some contrast and color variety. But I purchased the wrong balloons, so there was not much noticeable difference between clear and white balloons, because white balloons were not solid white, but rather pearly white. And to create that separation and color variation, I'm going to try and edit it in Photoshop. And to do that, I'm going to create two curves adjustments. First one is going to look like this. I'm going to darken the shadows and midtones significantly. Maybe a bit less. I create this little point right here to lock the highlights. And I'm going to hit Ctrl-I to invert the mask from white to black to cover the adjustment for now. And I'm going to create the second curves adjustment that is going to look like this. And same thing, Ctrl-I to invert. I'm going to group these two layers together, Shift-click, Ctrl-G, and I'm going to apply a mask to this group. The idea is when I paint over the balloons, I don't want to go over the edges and paint on the background, because I want these two curves adjustment to only affect the balloons. And the easiest way to do that, in my opinion, is to mask the background. To do that, I'm going to use Quick Selection tool and roughly select bathtub and all the balloons with my subject. And because I have enough of contrast between my setup and the background, the quick selection tool works pretty well. I won't be painting over the floating balloons, so I'm not worried about those. I won't be painting over my subject as well, so it doesn't matter if she's selected or not. I'm going to click on the select and mask, smooth the edges. And then while I have my group selected, I'm going to click on the create mask icon, and Photoshop automatically creates a mask based on my selection. And now I can paint over my balloons without worrying about the background. I'm taking white brush tool with opacity something like 50%, and my first layer, the one that was kind of like darkened, I'm going to use to make my clear balloons a bit more clear. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, just a few brush strokes will do a good job. And if I feel like I went too far, I can always go back by hitting Ctrl Z or switching back to black color, 100% opacity, and brush back. Here's before and after. And the second curves adjustment layer is for the balloons that I want to be a bit more solid white. So I'm doing the same here, but with kind of like an opposite effect, making some of the balloons brighter and whiter. You can always increase the hardness of a brush. And let's see the before and after. And here's the before, the group adjustments, and after. A couple of last things that I would like to do. First of all, I don't like this bright floor down here at the bottom of the frame, so I want to darken it. To do that, I'm going to grab my quick selection tool and again, roughly select the floor. Right here, it's selected a bit over. It grabbed the little balloons, so I'm holding Alt key to subtract from my selection, and there you go. Down here, the line is a bit jagged, but it's supposed to be straight. To fix that, I'm taking polygonal lasso tool, and again, I'm holding Alt key. You can see a little minus sign next to my tool cursor, and deselect these kind of like rough edges of my selection right there. Now it looks straight. And now I'm going to my adjustment layers down here, choose curves. Photoshop automatically created a mask based on my selection. And here in the properties of the curve, I'm going to pull the white point down and then create another point in the middle and also pull it down to darken the floor. But I feel like this is not enough. The color of the floor slightly differs from the wall, meaning that I feel like it's a bit too red. So I'm going to red channel and pull it down to make it a bit more cyan. And also I'm going to the green channel, but now pull it slightly up to make the layer slightly more green and less magenta. And then finally to the blue channel and pull it very slightly up as well. I feel like I want it to be a bit more dark, so I'm going back to the RGB and pulling it down. And that's it. Here's before and after. I want to add a little bit of contrast and color grading to the image, so I'm creating a solid color adjustment layer, and I'm choosing dark teal color, kind of like this, and I'm putting it into soft light blending mode and changing its opacity to 30%. Now I feel like I want my image to be slightly brighter, so I'm creating curves adjustment layer and pulling the RGB curve slightly up. And the very last thing, I feel like I want to add kind of like a slight vignette, And to do that, I'm creating another curves adjustment layer, pulling the RGB master curve down, hitting Ctrl I to invert the mask from white to black, grab white brush, make sure that it's soft, increase its size significantly, 30% opacity is good, and just tap on the corners of the image. Like that. And now I'm going to select all these 4 layers with final adjustments, Ctrl G to group, and here's before and after final adjustments. I'm also going to group my very first 3 layers that I used to create initial panorama. And next to the group, I'm going to hold Alt key and click on the eyeball icon to see the before and after our Photoshop edits. So here's the before Photoshop edits and after. And that's it. Our image is finally done. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments, and I hope this will inspire to do more creative photography.